Welcome in to the Betting the Pitch NFL edition. I'm your host, real underscore G Warner, joined by at A underscore Schnicker. It is week 15. The fantasy playoffs have begun. Congratulations to at A underscore Schnicker for his bye in our fantasy league. Apparently spending 33% of your money on Christian McCaffrey is not great when he played 2.5 games. But I did not make the playoffs. The only league I didn't make the playoffs in. So I guess shame on me. But ultimately, shame on Leon Lett reporting back to the Dallas Cowboys last night. Shame on A underscore Schnicker for telling me I was good after that debacle. Um, Felt like I had a really good week last week, and I did not take enough advantage of it. I went 0-1 on my best bet. After carrying this podcast for a while, it's now switched. And A underscore Schnicker, he had a fairly easy breezy, beautiful cover girl under on the San Diego, formerly San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. I had the Cleveland Browns. The Steelers left the back door open
They
forever.
did.
And
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney, of course, just continues to haunt my life. If Leon Lett wasn't bad enough, fortunately, I wasn't old enough to gamble in '93. But I think Kadarius Toney has certainly taken that off the mantle, just forever making mistakes. A underscore Snicker, how are you? Congratulations on fantasy. And now that nobody cares about that,
Yeah.
tell us how you're doing.
Well, I feel pretty good. I feel like we're now into the peak, the stretch run. Um, I think we need to remember that there is this lull that hits at like week 10, maybe week 9, and it
Okay.
kind of just like you kind of get into this fog. And that's starting to lift away as we get into the final couple weeks. Teams are primed and getting focused for the postseason. We're starting to really cut through all the clutter. So I still feel pretty good about where we're at, and I think we're going to have another strong finish to the year.
I should have prepared the statistics, but we had an incredible run down the stretch last season. Playoffs were really good to us. Even had me pulling at underscore Snickers pictures from his LinkedIn or from previous
Yeah.
stops on his journalism tour. I'm looking forward to bringing that all back again. But we're going to go through, as we always do, a six pack of games. We'll do the Thursday night football, two Monday nights, a Sunday night, and then we'll each snake draft at underscore Snicker. We'll be able to pick the first game he wants to talk about on the Sunday card. I'll do the last, and then our best bets will come end of show. We'll start on Thursday with the Los Angeles Rams, not the Chargers, not the St. Louis, not anything else. The Los Angeles Rams, LA Rams, a 2.5 point underdog on the road at the San Francisco 49ers. Total is 49 in this one. Is it a play out game for the
Yeah.
playoffs? It might be for the NFC West.
Yeah, it's a play out game for sure. Um, the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan specifically, that's the narrative, the talking point for this week is how much he's dominated his buddies, his cronies, whatever you want to look at with LaFleur and Sean McVay.
So the
But
records right now are the Seahawks 8-5, Rams
yep,
7-6, Cardinals 6-7, 49ers 6-7. But there are, of course, plenty of games left to be played in this division. Seahawks lost to the Rams at home. The Rams beat the 49ers, came back from behind to win early this season. One of those games that I still remember. I was going to play the Rams, didn't do it. Felt great about avoiding it, and then the Rams came back and won. So back to the point at hand, and that's Kyle Shanahan owning his cronies. However,
yep.
this crony, Sean McVay, he has won the same amount of Super Bowls. Just kidding, he's won more than Kyle Shanahan. Plus,
Hmm.
he's got a much healthier team with Puka Nacua, who might have broke his nose or whatever he said, and everyone was like, I don't know who understood what he was talking about on Sunday Night Football. Somehow Maria Taylor did. Credit to her. Um, but I gotta say the 49ers have gotten hurt, have been hurt,
Yeah.
stayed hurt, gotten more hurt. Where the Rams they fell off once they lost Puka Nacua and Cooper Cup as a combo. But ever since they've come back, they throttled the Vikings, have looked really good, beat the Bills, and now the Rams to me have a pretty good chance to control their own destiny. If they win out, they win the division.
Well, yeah, and I mean you could make the case the 49ers aren't exactly at that spot, but like, you know, this is if they're gonna have a last stand, this is it. If they lose this one, they're pretty much done. You've got last 3 weeks of the season, you have, Dolphins, but then you're facing the Lions and Cardinals to close out the year. Um, I would expect the Lions to be a favorite there. Dolphins, obviously, not so much, but I think like this week is pretty much the end all be all for San Francisco. I thought we saw a great effort. Last week you asked me, and still was riding the train of no, we should keep fading the 49ers. You had other thoughts, and you were spot on with that. It's still all about the injuries, and that's kind of what we've talked about before. They're just depleted, but you could tell Brock Purdy felt healthier on Sunday. And it wasn't just a bad Bears defense. We didn't see like the normal, you know, bounce back after the coach getting fired. It was just a domination. But I thought the offense played with purpose. The offense looked like they had an identity. George Kittle got involved. They were definitely at their peak. And I think that's one of the first times we've seen that from the 49ers in a while. But the Rams, I'm with you with the McVay stuff. Every time the Rams are an underdog, that's a team that I'm going to at least circle and strongly consider week in, week out because McVay, um, most of the time gets the most out of his guys. And yeah, do you feel good about was the 49ers choice this week? Was that just hey, buying low in the market, or do you feel like they're poised to rebound a little bit and the market has bottomed out on them?
Good question. I think so what ultimately scared me off of playing the 49ers, it dropped all the way down to a 3-point favorite at home, the Chicago Bears, replacing their coach with a diva at quarterback who thought he was going to get drafted and was going to demand for a portion of the entire team. That number had moved from six look ahead line through five, through six, all the way down through four to 3.5, all the way to three. And that significant movement plus the showing us Sunday Night Football, which to me was not so bad. I think beating the Bills beating anyone by a lot is not a big surprise to me, especially in Orchard Park, and even worse when it's snowing. But some of the big mistakes that their defense was making, again, left tackle missing. I feel like there are so many things piling up for the 49ers. As a Deebo Samuel owner who's actually alive in a playoff matchup, I have no idea what to do with him this week. Probably means I need to sit him, but I don't really
No,
know
I think
what
you
the
play him.
options look
Play him
like.
this week.
I mean,
They'll
maybe,
force
but
feed him the ball.
I mean, the Rams. So I think we can spend a lot of time in this game because one of the
Yeah.
Monday night games, or both of them, kind of feel like jokes.
Oh
But
yeah, let's for
um,
sure.
so I don't know that I've had a great year with the Rams. I won on them. I remember in the wild card round last year at the Lions because they lost by a single point or were an underdog. But I definitely lost on the Rams at the Cardinals this year. Didn't play them the next week against 49ers, unfortunately. And then running through their schedule, I think I mean, they had that big win over the Vikings on Thursday Night Football. I was very close to playing the Vikings in that game as a road favorite. I'm very happy I didn't. Glad I do stick to some of my rules. But I did play the Rams on Monday Night Football against the Dolphins. That was a loser. Couldn't move the ball whatsoever. Then I lost against the Rams on the Patriots the next week. So that's three losses right in a row, at least that I've seen so far this season. Played the Rams against the Eagles, lost that one. So I've been losing on basically every side of the Rams so far this year. That makes me hesitant to try to buy in. However, I do think you're giving the 49ers maybe a little too much credit considering they beat a team that is focused on next season and went on the road after a head coach firing. And, I think things were easy for the 49ers this week. It was a blowout before I even turned it on. So I just never even I think I was watching some sort of soccer match, I believe, on the third television screen that I have. Um, and it just seemed like one of those things where it was over early, which is what the 49ers needed. There is something to the Rams, though, having such a high scoring game, 44-42 on Sunday at home to the Bills, highest scoring game of probably our lifetimes, unless Leon Lett gets involved. But I think the Rams. I wonder if there's some like leftovers, some hangovers, not only from the success they had in beating the Bills, huge win for their playoff picture, but also I wonder if a physical team like the Bills can really punish you. And the Rams are going for it. They had to win that game. They left it all on the line. Now, short week, go on the road to San Francisco. I feel like the spot favors San Francisco significantly here. 2.5 point favorite in terms of where this number has moved. Initially, we had a look ahead line of 3 down to 2.5. Then we saw as low as 1.5 back up to 2.5. And that's where we see it live currently. Total is 49. That I guess has kind of climbed based on the result last week with so many points being scored as the Rams nearly scored 49 themselves against one of the best teams in football. Um, I think a lot of this, like, I think there's gonna be a lot of love for the Rams. I think that almost makes San Francisco look cheap, despite
Mhm.
not really being a full believer in San Francisco. They were just a 3 point favorite to the Bears. Now, 1 week or not even 4 days later, they're a smaller favorite to the Rams, who I mean, I guess they should be because the Rams are good, but
But it's close. I mean, it's two and
I
a half,
I mean, a 0.5 point difference between a Rams team that looks like they might be making the playoffs and the Bears, who are currently sitting 4-9, nowhere near any sort of playoffs, that don't even have the same coach.
But we could, you could factor into the numbers and that we could go back to that look ahead line of 6 and say, you know what, maybe the market just got a little silly and got caught away or got carried away with what it was, and maybe that 6 is about right. Um, and so, which actually feels right to me if I'm looking at my numbers. So
So
then
you
it's not
got the
that
Rams a
far-fetched.
3.5 point favorite on their neutral
On a
home field in
neutral
Los
against the
Angeles.
Bears, I
Yeah.
mean, probably not that high, but I would say 2.5.
Ooh,
Um,
I think I'd make them a bigger favorite.
you think so? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I
So,
mean, maybe the Bears were just what, 10 plus on the road at Detroit. Seriously, clearly a big difference in Detroit. You could argue that people didn't really realize how banged up they were, or are now. I just feel like there's a big difference, a big gap between the Rams and the Bears, and only half
yeah.
of a point kind of makes me think that there's a marketplace that's supporting the 49ers, whether they're doing it before. It just doesn't, if you're trying to use the science of line making, I don't know that you can at this point, because I feel like these things are all way off and everything is so reactionary in the NFL that
Yeah.
I if you're like,
There's
okay, maybe it's easier this way. Uh, can you back the Rams at 2.5 point underdogs on a short week in San Francisco?
so I was looking at I've bet on the Rams, bet on or against the Rams 8 times this season. Um,
Did you
and
win
I'm
more than me, which was 0?
5-3
Okay,
in those. Um,
that'll pay the mortgage.
it would be great. Um, and most of it's been a pretty basic formula of picking my spots when the Rams are underdogs and then fading them when they're favorites. But you're right, like 2.5 gives me pause. Even in that kind of like that motto of just black and white, hey, let's take a look at the Rams when they're underdogs. That makes me a
Okay.
little nervous.
Does that mean you would play the 49ers at 2.5?
God, I know because that's again this like these are the two teams I feel like I have the hardest rules for and against like this year. Like we've talked about being against the 49ers all year. Um, it probably ends up me being on the sidelines because I don't think that number's big enough. Um, just because he like
This is about the
it's
number.
one.
So if we rewind the tape from probably a month or two ago, long season, probably a month ago, this was about the same price that the Kansas City Chiefs were on the road at San Francisco.
Mm,
And
yeah,
Caffrey wasn't back then. I feel like there's a lot of respect in this number for
yeah,
the Rams, and I think there's too
yeah.
much. Um, so I think if
But
you are in a pool where you have to play this game on a Thursday, the pool that we're in does not include Thursday night games, unfortunately. But I think I'm taking San Francisco -2.5.
I
I
do. But it's
don't.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean it's this. The league is such a wide pendulum swing every single year, and like maybe the 49ers just don't have it.
I mean, they don't have it. We know that they are, but at a certain point, their valuation becomes low enough where it does swing, and it makes there's went from extremely overvalued this entire year to maybe having some value. I mean, who knows who's playing running back, but you can pick those up off the street.
Yeah, that's
If
fine.
Purdy's, I don't know how he got healthy in a single week. I feel like it was a dominant game that when the 49ers rushing attack is going, he can look like he's worth the max contract or whatever Larry Bird rule, just kidding NBA. But whatever he's going to get paid is probably way too much. I feel like the 49ers aside here. I don't know that I want to touch it. I want to see how much, because I don't think the Rams can be valued any higher. Just beat Josh Allen, who looked unbeatable and was going to potentially steal a number one seed from the Chiefs, and scored 1 million points. And Puka Nacua looks unstoppable, which he might be. I don't know, that might
Yeah,
be enough to keep me away from the 49ers. But I feel like if you have to make a pick on this one, I think San Francisco is the side.
I appreciate that the Rams are following the 49ers mentality of just like, hey, let's get our best players the ball in whatever way we can. So getting Puka in like jet sweeps and running the ball. Like I appreciate that you've recognized like these are our playmakers, these are our guys, and we're going to get them the ball in multiple different ways in all spots of the field. Um, we've done like 16 minutes on this. You think we're good there?
Yeah, we should move. So move to Sunday night, then we'll do the two Monday nights, then we'll come back to two games on Sunday. The Green Bay Packers, a 3-point favorite on the road at Seattle. All the juice on the Seattle side. Total is 46 in this one.
This is like the perfect NFL type matchup. You have a team that looked great last week against the Packers, who lost in a standalone spot. Didn't look terrible, but like lost in a standalone spot. So, like, this is what we dream of in the NFL, right? Um, to look at the Packers. But then you look at it and you say, oh, they're 3-point favorites on the road at Seattle in a primetime night game. So here's my what like Seattle looked pretty decent against Arizona.
Dominated.
They dominated. However,
At
I
least
think Seattle just
their rushing attack dominated. I'll put it that way.
yes.
Zach
And
Charbonnet was unstoppable,
and
and
their defense confounds Kyler Murray because they get pressure on him. They keep the edge. They don't let him get out.
yeah,
And
they
certain
kept the little mouse in the pocket, and he couldn't see
in the
over the
pocket.
lineman, so he was just
And then he
throwing the
made
ball
bad
up in the air.
decisions. Then he turns the ball over. Um, but now I'm just starting to think like maybe Seattle just knows how to play Arizona really well.
Beat him twice, shut down
Beat
the
them twice.
offense the first
And
matchup.
they were underdogs both games, I think.
A lot of what put me on Arizona this Sunday was they closed a favorite in Seattle a few weeks ago, and a
Yeah.
pick six from Kyler Murray really swung the
Yep.
game. There's hardly any scoring. The Arizona pass rush has been good, but that might just be because they blitz a ton, and Kyler Murray looked horrible. Which I don't know how that. I mean, Arizona took an early lead, and I was like, "Oh, off to a great start," and then turned the game on, and everything went hell in a handbasket from there. Got to stop, I think, force a field goal, and we're up 7-3, and then Kyler pick, and that was pretty much that.
Yeah. And like so you're talking about the pick six, and yes, that would be normally, looking at the box score and be like, oh, well, this is obviously not a repeatable type thing. Maybe it is. Maybe Seattle just knows how to defend Kyler. And I will say the Seahawks they're healthier on the defensive front. We talked about that last week. So I want to give them a little credit there. It's just a bad spot. Like everything about this makes me want to look to Green Bay here, but that would be my initial lean. I'm just not a huge fan of playing road favorites
I
against
think if
like a
Green Bay
competent
was a
team.
slight underdog, like a 1+1 or something like that, they'd be a lot more interesting than a 3-point favorite. And
I just don't, yeah, I
uh,
don't understand what this market's doing.
I
Like,
think if there is any sort of home field advantage, I am not looking at a road favorite. And I think there's a significant amount. I don't know that the 12s are as meaningful as they have been in the past in Seattle. The acoustics of that stadium is weird. I haven't been in it, but I've been next door to it. While I could probably hear Taylor Swift while I was at a Mariners game. But I feel like the Packers, I mean, they could have very easily been the Lions. It didn't happen, didn't work
yeah,
out. I thought one thing that I was very interested about those Packers is, especially as an overbacker on Thursday night, Packers and over. It was really nice to hit that both ways.
nice. It was good.
But Green Bay was literally waiting to break the huddle until 15 seconds or less on the play clock. They were grinding and running clock the whole time. They like would have there would have been like complaints like written up about you if you were in a NFL Madden online PlayStation or Xbox league about cheating, cheesing, whatever they would call it. And it was very apparent to me. I don't know that anyone noticed it, but that does make me wonder if that's a Detroit thing or if that's just what they're going to be doing because they want to slow games
Hmm.
down. And I was really surprised by how well Green Bay ran the ball. They couldn't block the Lions' pass rush at all, which is missing stars. But we're able to handle, I thought, a defensive line that maybe Detroit was missing an important body in the middle, which I think was the case. Seattle, though, as you mentioned, where they are best, I think, is in their D line, both stopping the run and getting pressure on the quarterback. I think Jordan Love is mobile, not as mobile as Kyler Murray, but we'll see if he can stand in the pocket and make some throws. Green Bay's got really bad fantasy wide receivers because there's too many options, and I think that also plays well for Green Bay. Um, 3-point favorites, so I can only look at Seattle. Green Bay travels super well. There's gonna be a million fans because everyone's a Packers fan. Everyone somehow has a cheesehead in their garage, but Seattle getting a full three right now. Sunday Night Football looks very interesting, and I think I like under 46. The big question for me is how does Geno Smith perform? He still has some really bad days, throws, everything
Mhm.
in him. If he can keep it under control, I feel like the home underdog is where I'm looking into under on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I think you really kind of nailed it there with the pace of play. Um, that maybe this is another under to look to. Prime time under spot.
Primetime unders. We're certainly keeping the lights on for the start of the season, and then every game went over in incredible fashion. But maybe we're back. I feel
I've been
like
able to pick my spots, but yeah,
I mean,
that's
the Chargers Chiefs, maybe Lad McConkey made a 15-point difference. I don't think so, but that was
yeah,
pretty painless for most of that game. Besides, I was like, okay, where's the late fourth quarter scoring going to happen?
exactly.
But
Lad's pretty awesome. I mean, he's worth something.
he's certainly worth something, enough
Like
to
he's the
be off.
only competent receiver in that on that team.
Well, every time I bet the Chargers, Quentin Johnson can't catch until Sunday night. So move
He
to
caught,
Monday,
yeah, he
two
caught.
games. One's of more interest than the other. I guess they're both interesting, and
Yep,
just because
they're
one
fine.
team matters. Chicago Bears are a 7-point underdog on the road at Minnesota. Totals 43 and a half.
Where are you at with the Vikings? I feel like I'm not. I'm. I'm. I see 11-2, and I don't really buy it.
We haven't bought it. No one's bought it. Sam
Um,
Darnold looked like he was injured for a 3 or 4 week stretch. But I think nothing like the Atlanta Falcons secondary to make any sort of quarterback
yeah,
feel
and
confident.
And that's the tough part is I just don't believe in the Falcons coaching staff. Um, Jimmy Lake, their defensive coordinator, he has spent a lot of time in college. I am not a fan of his scheme, his style, anything about it. Like I have questions about Raheem Morris. Like to me, we had talked about the Falcons, and I was there with you. Um, but like the coaching mismatch there was disgusting. Um, I just don't think, but you look at that box score and there's no way you get to 42-21 if you look at the box score.
Well,
Um,
I know how you get there because Jordan
no
Addison, if
turnover.
I'd started, would have made me get into the playoffs as a amazing 7-6 6 seed.
I
Uh,
was rooting for you, man.
he was running like with no one around. And
Yeah.
so what looked like an incredibly efficient Sam Darnold day, I feel like a lot of NFL quarterbacks could have done. We'll get to the Falcons in a second as the other Monday night game.
Yeah, it kind of
Um,
works.
but 7-point favorite on Minnesota. I mean, Chicago just went
Oh,
got blasted at San Francisco. Yes, this is an individual matchup. We're probably looking at Minnesota about as highly valued after that big win over against Atlanta, plus
yeah.
Chicago getting blown out away from home. I mean, this number's climbed, I think, pretty significantly. Let's see, the look ahead number was initially as low as 5. Now it's at 7 and a very juiced 7 on the Chicago side. Um, at this point, like this was a close game a few weeks ago. I backed the Bears, had a miracle under looked like it should have won, and then had a miracle push in overtime, despite the Bears getting the ball first. I think that probably helps in division. Usually, you can see some weirder results. And it's hard to beat an in-division foe by more than a touchdown, but that's still not that much safety on the Chicago Bears at this point. So I don't have much
No.
interest in that seven. And at this point, like the Vikings defense is good. They're producing. I feel like there's some value on under 43 and a half potentially in this one. Just because I think that will potentially play against Sam Darnold, who had such a big night or day, afternoon against Atlanta. And Chicago, I feel like just I don't see it. I don't believe it with Caleb Williams. And he's gonna have to prove it to me.
Here's the thing is like we've talked about being more selective in what we play, what we do. I think there will be other opportunities to make money against Minnesota. And even if the Bears cover this week, I'm not going to be kicking myself that I didn't consider it more because um, I think you're mostly just looking at this as like it's a spot play. It's a divisional matchup. Look ahead lines move to a full possession. Um, it's just not for me. There'll be other chances the rest of this year to be against the Vikings, and we'll definitely make some money against them.
I think we will. Falcons 4.5 point favorites on the road at the Vegas Raiders. Can't imagine a huge Atlanta fan base is going to be out in Vegas, though they do have some fans. Total's
Yeah,
44 and a half in this one. The Raiders are looking like they'll start former Atlanta quarterback Desmond Ritter. Seemed like because every other quarterback has been carted off the field for the
yeah.
Raiders so far this season. Um, huh. Do we see
The
Michael
revenge
Penix?
spot.
Do we see Michael Penix in this game?
It's such a hot take question. Like it's just such like the talk radio question, but
I
like
just asked the question, do we
I'm
see
not
Michael
I'm
Penix
not
in the game?
attacking you for asking the question.
Okay.
I just don't know where to go. I think everyone sees that there's a real problem that he has no arm strength. Um, I it's rough. Is Penix that much better? I don't think so.
Can he throw the football 35
He's
miles
definitely
an
got
hour?
an arm for
Can,
sure.
can he
He's got an
throw
arm.
35 miles an hour? Because I saw him dropping dimes against the Texas Longhorns, as did you in the
Oh
Sugar
my
Bowl last
gosh.
year. However,
Nightmare.
it is a little different though because then he had like the worst game of his life, or at least from one game to another, from
Crazy.
that
Yeah, what a
Sugar
good
Bowl to the
secondary can
national
do.
title game.
Yeah.
LOL. But Mike, when I asked that question, it sounds like since you won't answer it, I'm going to assume you
I'm not
say,
going to answer it.
all right, assume you say no. If we see Michael Penix, that means Cousins got hurt, which would probably not be great to have a rookie on the road as a favorite in a game in the middle of it. Or Cousins got benched because he's been bad. And I don't think you bench him just because they're not scoring touchdowns, they're kicking field goals or whatever. I feel like this is a perfect get right game for Kirk Cousins against a really bad defense that I think as someone I was watching and they were like, yeah, all these guys are just running wide open against the Raiders. It's because they play this really soft defense and they allow you to
Yeah.
have whatever you want. I think it works really well for Kirk Cousins. Like I'm really thinking about starting Darnell Mooney over Deebo Samuel in my fantasy league this week, just because I feel like there's going to be a lot of he's more of a downfield threat, which is a concern. But I feel like Atlanta's going to really try their best to make their investment in Kirk Cousins stand up. They don't want to switch quarterbacks and then all of a sudden they have to fight the media or whatever media circus there already is. And I don't know what it would take for me to want to back Desmond Ritter. Like he came in after Gardner Minshew broke his clavicle and immediately had a sack fumble, like first possession, then nearly led the team down the field to cover late against the Broncos, but fell a few inches short. One of the few games that actually has broken my direction. I just feel like it's usually my clavicle that's lying on the turf. Um, but I think that's what this offers here. And the Falcons now out of first in the NFC South. If they can't win this game, you might stick a fork in them. Even with
Yeah.
a two-win advantage against the Bucks head to head, can tie and win the division. Don't even have to take the lead back. But and man, I just like, what would it take you to back to Las Vegas Raiders here?
I wouldn't be backing the Raiders. Like I would, I think the Falcons are what, on a 3-game losing streak. They got torched by the Broncos in a bad spot where they weren't healthy, and then the two losses they've just recently had where they've been the winner on the box score, which is where I get back to like the coaching part. That's like something's not clicking with for me. Um, because I think at that point,
They
like
dominated time of possession against the Chargers, and like to me, that I felt like it was one of those toss-up games that could have been a win for Atlanta, and it probably will cost them the playoff spot.
that's you know what we're not at that point yet in the season because we still have what 4 games, but like if the Bucks they're going on the road to play the Chargers this week. Like if the Bucks were to lose, like that would probably influence my take on the Falcons a little bit
Mm.
because this is like the all-in effort for the Falcons, and this is a team they obviously can
I
beat
mean,
by
if they're not going all in after conceding their forever lead in the NFC
yeah.
South, then like I feel like they've been giving it their all every week. Like, why is this
I
one
mean,
different than
sure,
the others?
yeah, you're right. Like it's hard to say, oh, we can't always gauge effort, but like maybe the best way to put it is the last 3 games that they've played have been teams that could challenge them. The Raiders are not a team that are even interested in challenging, um, except for maybe Max Crosby. I shouldn't
Yeah.
neglect him.
Max of two
Um,
X's. Okay, so we've made
yeah,
it
let's
through
go.
the standalone games. What game do you want to talk about on the Sunday card?
I mean, the game I'm surprised wasn't flexed to prime time with Buffalo and Detroit. What are we doing
That
here?
is the low-hanging fruit here. So the Lions, a one and a
Yeah.
half point favorite, juiced all the way as max as they can until they start really offering odds on the Bills, which I think a lot of people would probably take plus 101 to get the best quarterback in football coming off a loss. In terms of where this number has moved, we saw 2.5 in a look-ahead number, as high as 2.5 this week, and the Bills certainly will be smarting over that loss. The Lions have extra days to prepare. Total is 54.5 in this one. So Lions minus 1.5 or two across the marketplace. Total is 54.5. The Lions looked like the best team in football, right? Until they kind of
Yeah.
squeaked by Green Bay. And you could argue they squeaked by the Chicago Bears. Yeah, those two teams are in their division though. Smacked around the Colts, but they have a non-starter at quarterback. Smacked around the Jaguars. Don't even want to go there. Somehow came back with 5 picks against the Texans on Sunday Night Football and won. Dominated the Packers, but couldn't do it without really bad weather. So I feel like we've seen the good of the Lions, where they just kill teams that are bad: Jaguars, Colts, Titans, Cowboys, like all on that list. They really struggled, in my opinion, on the road at Arizona earlier this year. Um, Lost at home to Tampa. So like they're not like this perfect team by any means.
No, no.
And they've suffered a lot of injuries, which we have to think about. Uh, Josh Allen off of loss. We'll have the interns look up the record there, but it's got to be pretty good. And I gotta say, I mean, the number is tiny. How in the world is this Super Bowl matchup? How does it only have the Detroit Lions with extra rest, a sub field goal favorite, the Buffalo Bills? It
I
tells me
think
that
we've
everyone's
fallen in
backing
love with Buffalo. How can you not
even
fall in love with
after
Buffalo? It
giving up
happens every year.
44 points to Matthew Stafford, who literally will not leave the pocket, even if it's on fire.
It happens every year. And I think it is more impressive what Buffalo's done this year. Um, yeah, maybe is this the square bet? No, these are both pretty public teams at this point. So I don't think you have to really factor in any of that. Um, I think most of the takes though this week are gonna be like, are you kidding me? We're getting the Lions basically a pick at home with extra rest, all the situational spots. Um,
I don't
we
think I
did
want to
talk
be on that side.
when Buffalo went through like their kind of small malaise issue where they got blown out against Baltimore on Sunday Night Football and then had another road game against Houston, and that was a weird game. Um, I think again, this is another pretty bad spot for the line or for the Bills. You go across the country, play the afternoon game against the Rams, get your butt kicked, you travel back home, and then go back out on the road to play the best team in the NFC. Um, yeah, I mean, it's another bad spot. The, I mean, I feel like we would see the Lions may try to slow it down, but I don't really think, I mean, Buffalo's going to just try to run the ball. Like whether it's Josh Allen or James Cook, sorry, bring him up. But
Thank you for your performance, James Cook. In a game where your team scored 42 points, you
yeah,
might have gotten me 4.2, kept me out of the playoffs. But I guess it wasn't really his fault. It's a lot of user error and not having Jordan Addison in my lineup and then having to start Juju Smith-Schuster because Lad McConkey decided he would rather golf on Sunday night. Um, I think the only side I want here is the Bills. The Josh Allen side. I mean, I just looking up his win-loss record after a loss, and as you mentioned, you beat me to it. He did lose to the Texans after losing to the Ravens, both on the road, both back-to-back weeks. Um, I think the Bills are fine with throwing the ball as much as they can. I do wonder about Detroit's pass rush, and I do wonder how well they stop the run. I don't really know what it would take for me to bet against the Bills right now. I think I'm more likely to bet against the Lions. Did it with the Packers on Thursday night, only got 3.5 points, and that was somehow enough.
yeah.
Not sure where to go with this one. For my interest that I'd like to discuss in the remaining time that we have in this episode, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Dolphins 3-point underdogs on the road at Houston. Total is 46.5.
Okay, so we can quickly slice this up. Did the Texans figure out the offensive problems with the bye week? Um, I think I
Nico
think this
Collins, no.
offense this should be this should be the get right game for them. I had the over with the Dolphins and Jets, was felt pretty comfortable the whole way through. Um, Mostly because I'm really still a fan of the Dolphins offense. I think Tua's come out and been great since the concussion. Um, so I mean, I would again expect some points here. Total of 46.5. That's where I would look.
But the Texans are so good defensively.
Are
They've
they?
got a defensive coach named D'Amico Ryans, who was everyone's heartthrob last year, then entered this season with a 9.5 win total.
I mean, if we want to get in X's and O's, it's probably does. He never blitzes. Um,
And when he does, he gets absolutely raped. His cornerbacks. I should use a different word, but that's what we got.
did
Um,
you say well, you said raked. Raked.
Pillaged, yes, raked and pillaged, like all of our ancestors used to do. We probably don't have time to go any further, so it's time to get to our best bets. Before we get there, please check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Look at Betting the Pitch at the real underscore G Warner on YouTube. If you're rather watch us on video, that you could certainly watch us on any platform. I do have a new phone, so I'm putting out a reel, though I can't figure out a lot of things about it. But check out the at the real underscore G Warner on Patreon. If you want my plays across all platforms, at A underscore Snicker, where are you going for your best bet on this episode?
Okay. Let's go to Denver. Let's take the Indianapolis Colts plus 3.5.
Ooh.
Right now, you can get it at most shops like $1.05, $1.06. So you may be able to hold off and see if you could get a four there. Both teams off a bye. I kind of have mixed feelings about Bo Nix, but I also think, this is just a good spot for the Colts. Let's just leave it at that.
Let's leave that. And that is Andrew Sticker 1-0 off of his best bet last weekend. So it's time for me to jump in. Hey, this is the real underscore G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the NFL best bet on at YouTube and on Instagram. At A underscore Snicker just gave you his best bet 1-0 last week. He gave you the Indianapolis Colts a 3.5 point underdog as he just can't quit Josh Richardson. For my best bet, I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers, 2.5 point favorites, short week for the Cowboys. Panthers at home, only laying less than a field goal. Hard to ask the Panthers to win. I thought they looked really good, nearly beat the Philadelphia Eagles last week. Now Cowboys come off a heartbreaking Leon Lett 2.0 type of loss on Monday Night Football. I don't see it with Cooper Rush. The wins from the past days are gone. And I really like what I've seen from Bryce Young. I really like what I've seen from Carolina. They keep fighting, and this is where they get their revenge or finally get a win. So check us out on next week's episode on Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and we'll see you later. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you all next week, Tuesday night. Get your picks and get your winners.